everybody. Good evening. We are coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts. Our first thing that we want to do is just introduce ourselves and welcome you to this conversation on the King Memorial. We are here tonight to talk about the RFQ and to answer some questions for artists and teams interested in the project. I am joined tonight by Paul English, Robin Powell-Mendez, Barry Gaither, and myself, Karen Goodfellow. And I'm just going to give everybody a moment to say hello and explain who they are.
Hi, everyone. This is Paul English. I'm the co-chair with Reverend Liz Walker. Liz is unable to make it tonight, but I want to thank everyone for participating. I hope everyone on this webinar applies. It's a pretty simple process, which you'll hear about over the next half hour before we open up for questions. And I look forward to everyone's participation.
Hi, my name is Robin Powell-Mendez, and I'm the Executive Director of MLK Boston. And we are quite pleased to have the opportunity to connect with you.
And I'm Barry Gaither, co-chair of the Art Committee, and my normal work is in the museum field.
And again, everyone, I'm Karen Goodfellow. I am co-chair of the Art Committee with Barry, and I am the director of the Boston Art Commission and Boston Air in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture here in Boston. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, this is Robin Powell-Mendez again. MLK, by way of background, MLK Boston is a new nonprofit working closely with the city of Boston to bring a world-class permanent installation commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s and Coretta Scott King's legacy to Boston, and to sponsor local events and discussions to bring their words to life. Given the national leadership and polarized discourse, we believe that the timing is ideal to revisit the work of Coretta Scott King and to read Dr. King's speeches and writings about racial equality, immigrant rights, war, economic fairness, and many other issues about social injustice.
So tonight, we're going to be, as I mentioned, going over some information for interested teams in the project. You can expect us to move through this agenda more or less in the time listed here. We're hoping to spend the first 15 minutes going over the request for qualifications, and then the timeline we expect for the project, our selection criteria, how you can expect to apply, and then we're going to leave time for a Q&A session. We prepared some questions that we've been sort of receiving a little bit in advance of this webinar, but we really encourage you to engage with us here tonight and to chat with us. And also, we'll share information for how you can email us. The email address where you can write to is bac@boston.gov. And if you are watching this after this live conversation, you can also email us there with questions.
Our intent here is to create a memorial that will be a compelling call to action, that will at the same time create a place of reflection and of recommitment here in the city of Boston, built around the legacies and the values of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, and to do all of that in a way that will be exciting and transformative and instructive, not just to those of us who live here in Boston, but to the nation and the world beyond. So this is an opportunity to engage artists in helping give form to a visualization that honors an equitable and fair society, and that seeks to honor not just the place of Dr. King as a courageous and visionary activist, but also the place of Coretta Scott King, and by extension of all of the women who were central in their contributions to the civil rights movement and to positive change in our nation over the last few decades. So the memorial will do those things, and at the same time, it will also probe the relationship of Dr. King and Coretta, both of whom studied, lived, and worked in Boston. So they have an intimate relationship to this space as well. This is a visionary opportunity to create something that memorializes courageous visionaries who changed the life of our nation and altered the philosophical frame of the world.
In terms of eligibility, the artists who should be applying, our expectation is that they will be coming from various backgrounds. We are going to use the term the artist and artist very generally, but please keep in mind that when we are saying that, we're referring to all artists and designers, architects, landscape architects, and teams. We're anticipating to primarily get applications from teams. But when we are having our conversations, we really will just be using the term artist. So please keep in mind that you should be thinking about the project in terms of building a team that can really, be competitive for the project. And for this project, we're looking at a budget that will be between $3 and $5 million. And that fundraising is being done by MLK Boston. The final location has not yet been determined, but it will be within the city of Boston. We are currently doing research on several possible sites for the project, and as Barry really just described in terms of the theme of the project, it's really important for us to be making great connections to the King's time here. That information will be made available during the second phase of the project when we will be sharing an RFP. We have been mapping these sites out, as I mentioned, and there's really an incredible history of their time here in Boston. And this research will be something that we're talking about and discussing, and you can find more information on it at mlkboston.org. We, as I mentioned, this is a two-phase project. We are currently in the RFQ process, so this is a request for qualifications, and for those familiar, request for qualifications, we're really not asking for proposals. We ask you not to submit any proposals at this time, and your project, will not be considered if you do so. We're really looking for you to submit your qualifications, meaning your portfolio, and answering a few questions at this time so that we can then decide who we want to invite into the next phase of the project. We had released the RFQ in mid-December, and tonight is obviously our informational webinar. So we are very excited to be having this conversation, but we are looking very quickly to our set deadline, which is February 28th, and that will be at midnight. And we are hoping to be holding some interviews during April and May of this spring. As I mentioned, again, the RFQ is the first phase, and the RFP will be the second phase, and that will be a request for proposals. So this is when we'll be looking at specific concepts and ideas. We're going to be inviting 5 artists to participate in this second phase of the project. And we are looking to announce those 5 artists this May, and then have them spend the spring and the summer really researching their projects and developing their projects in terms of In terms of the funding that they'll have for that, they'll each be getting $5,000 for that work. It's important for us that we are compensating artists for their time, which is why we are doing this project in 2 phases. And then from September to October, we're expected to hold interviews, have public presentations, exhibit proposals, and allow for public comment, which is very important for this project as well. We are anticipating a final announcement of the artist in November of 2018. Something to keep in mind with these timelines is that they are subject to change, but that all changes will be posted on mlkboston.org.
We've put lots of energy in trying to assure that there is the maximum opportunity for artists to apply singly or as teams and to take part in this endeavor. So we've codified very clearly selection criteria, and I'd like to just review those one by one so that they can be as clearly understood and heard as possible. First, the artist must demonstrate a history of professional competency in project management and construction administration, and must have completed some projects of significant size. Second, the artist has to demonstrate organizational experience in proactive organizing and partnering with multiples and sometimes disparate stakeholders of various backgrounds and sensitivities. Third, the artist's statement needs to demonstrate an interest in social justice, resilience, and racial equity. Next, the vision for the project speaks to the memorial's significance in Boston and responds to the Art Commission's curatorial mission to commission and approve innovative and transformative artworks that, 1, engage the community, 2, enrich and enliven the urban environment, 3, are driven by a clear artistic vision, 4, enhance the diversity of the existing collection, 5, respond directly to the specific environment, 6, possess durability appropriate to the lifespan of the work. And finally, the body of work of the artist must show a strong and clear artistic vision. So keeping those in mind, we're making a big welcome to every artist and team out there who feel motivated to respond to these criteria.
Great. And if you are one of those artists, which we hope you are, since you're listening to us right now, we have really endeavored to make the application process as straightforward as possible. You can find the application on mlkboston.org, which is generally your best place to start for all information on the project. I had mentioned a little bit about what we'd be looking for in this first phase of the project. Again, the request for qualifications. So we are just asking you to submit descriptions of your team, basically, and that's your bios, your CVs, and really think about anything else that might be important for us to see at this time, for us to understand your capacity for doing this project successfully. We are also asking for an artist statement. And again, keep in mind here, when we're saying artist, we mean for your team. If you have an artist and a landscape architect applying together, please consider the statement to be reflective of your whole team applying. Thirdly, we're asking for you to share project vision. And for this, we're really looking for your conception of the memorial significance for Boston. Again, as you're hearing in this conversation tonight, if you read through the RFQ, we are looking for something very specific to Boston and to Boston's relationship with the Kings. And we also want to keep in mind all of those who are coming to Boston to visit and their perspective in that they'll be learning about our city, by seeing this memorial. And this is something that we are thinking about as very important to our world right now. But we are also thinking about how it will be perceived and understood in the future. We'll also be looking for past work samples and an annotated image list. This is clearly very important. It's very important that you choose these examples very carefully and thoughtfully. If you go back to the selection criteria, the things that we're looking for, where we want projects that show that you can meet these expectations. Lastly, we'll want a list of references, which we'll be looking into before we select the 5 artists that we will be choosing to move into the second phase of the project. Those artists will receive the RFP, and they will also receive the $5,000 stipend that we mentioned earlier as well. And again, very importantly, please note that we are not requesting design work at this stage and will not review applications that submit design proposals. So please just, I know you might be very excited and think you have an incredible concept, but please hold that back and express your interest in the project in the written portions.
So now, this is Paul. Now we just want to open it up for Q&A. You can either email your questions to bac@boston.gov, that's the Boston Art Commission, and we're reading that email in real time, or you can use the chat option on YouTube and just type in your question there, and we can respond to any question to either of those. And let me see, before we answer, well, let me see if there's any questions online. Hold on. Any questions?
No. Have some prep ones.
All right, until we, okay, here's a question. So Stephen White, I don't know if everyone can see his question, but Stephen, thank you for that. Stephen asks, will special preference be given to African-American artists or artists from the East Coast? It's not a requirement for the artist to be African-American or based in Boston, but certainly will take note of their applications, but we can't give a preference. Do you want to say anything more about that, Barry?
Just that this is a very open competition, and whoever has the qualifications should enter.
The next question is from Daniel Sabio, and Daniel asks, are there just 5 finalists and then 1 single recipient to manage the end project? That's correct. So we'll look at these applications submitted at the end of February, spend a lot of time going through them, and we'll pick 5 finalists. We'll give each finalist $5,000 to develop proposals over the summer, and then we'll pick one of those finalists as the one we're going to commission for the work. Next question is from Linda. She asked, what do we mean by open source? What we mean by that is we're publishing everything on the website and in the Facebook group. It's really important to us that the citizens of Boston feel like they have ownership in this project and that their voice is listened to. So we're holding a number of community meetings. If you go to the MLK Boston website, there's a tab called Events, and that lists all the past meetings and all the upcoming meetings. I think we have 4 meetings scheduled already. They're going to be happening over the next few weeks. I think there are more coming. We want to make sure everyone has input to that. I also, for those of you who want to brush up your knowledge of Dr. King and Coretta King, on the website, there's a tab called Resources, which gives you links to recommended readings by our teams. Okay, any other questions? Another question we have up here is, how do we connect with other people in the project? As I mentioned, the Facebook group, we have about 650 people in the Facebook group right now. It has vibrant discussion. I hope that all of you participate and join. You can find the Facebook group by searching for MLK Boston, or just go to the mlkboston.org website and click on Contact, and there's a link from there directly to the Facebook group. Okay, so Betsy asks a question. Barry, I'm going to let you take this one. The question says, can you share more about the emphasis on the drum major sermon and speech as opposed to other speeches and its connection to Boston?
The drum major speech is a fairly late speech in Dr. King's work, and in a very real sense, summarizes how he wanted to be seen and remembered in public consciousness. I think that is the privilege that has sort of been given to it in the citations. But in truth, if you're reading the works of Dr. King and responding to them, you may respond to them from anywhere in the body of his work, because there were certain things very consistent throughout. He had a consistent interest in opposing militarism, in fighting for economic and social justice, and in trying to rid us of the racism that had been endemic in our society. So I think you can think of specific speeches as providing, in a certain sense, some metaphors that you might choose to build on, but any of his speeches would be appropriate starting points for a concept.
Great, thanks, Barry. The next question is from Jesse Stark. Jesse asks, when applying through our statement, are we okay to share a vision without proposal along with our app materials, or would that not be considered? I think if we go back to the slide earlier, we're going to post these slides up on the MLKBoston.org website, so you'll be able to access this presentation right at the end of this presentation. I'll upload those slides. The selection criteria, again, we want to know about your professional competency, your organizational experience, your outer statement in general, talking about your interest in social justice and resilience and racial equity. We do not want, the vision for the project is more about how you see this work relating to the city of Boston, kind of the importance of that, not anything about what the actual memorial might look like. And Barry, do you want to say more about that? About the artist statement?
Yes, the artist statement is really initially trying to get a feeling that the artist applying has actually thought about and has some experience with these issues, because it's not for a final thing that we're doing the initial review. It's for capacity. And part of capacity, just as working with teams, knowing how to manage a project, those are all sort of skills. We're also wanting to know that this is not the first time the artist or the team has thought about issues of social justice and race. And if they've thought about these issues before and perhaps addressed to them in earlier works, that's very relevant for this in terms of setting forth a general framework of understanding.
Great, thanks, Jesse. The next question is from Karen. She asks, how expansive do we expect the site location to be? So we can't speak too much of this yet because we haven't selected the site, but I will say, if you think about other memorials in Boston, that I imagine this to be comparable in terms of scope. I'm a big fan of the Holocaust Memorial. I find it to be very, has a good presence, it's immersive, it's serious, and it has, it's located on a site, it's a little bit busy where it's located, but there is an opportunity to have some reflection there. I think it needs to be something like that, where there's a notable enough work that people notice it, take time to take it in, think both about what the King stood for and kind of the beloved community and the vision for what the future will look like, but then also facing the realities of, for example, the Globe Spotlight series recently on racism in Boston. We want people to reflect on both of those things, and we somehow, through your help, need to come up with a memorial that will speak to both of those things. As far as size of the memorial, we're not sure yet, but when we select a site, we will give people dimensions. So the 5 finalists, once they're selected, will have dimensions as part of it when we get to that stage. All right, the next question is from Amy, and she says, if our artistic vision will work best in certain locations, how would we address that without discussing our design proposal?
So as we've mentioned a few times, the site has not yet been determined, and we are not looking for proposals. So I would not focus on site or your particular design in your application. I think if you want to talk about the spirit or the experience that you think is appropriate for the project, then that would be good. But I would not spend too much time talking about what the site or the location would need to be in your proposal.
Yeah, we want to know how you think about public art in general in Boston and about your thoughts on how to honor the legacy. We don't want to get specific ideas of what the installation might look like. All right, the next question, I'm going to let Karen answer this, but I'll just read it out. It's from Sam, and Sam says, for the application, are you looking for a specific number of images in a specific format? And also, can we submit videos? Karen, can you take that one?
Yeah, so we have file size limits, 400 megabytes per file and 800 for all of the files on your submission, and we are open to files of different sorts. In terms of the number of images, I think we had it at 10, which you are able to put whatever feels appropriate to you to represent your work in there. If you feel like you want to have an image with or a file that shows multiple views of a project, that's up to you. Just keep in mind that the jury will be looking at these on a screen and not to make them too cluttered or unattractive for viewing. So please use your best judgment and keep in mind that the jury will be really looking for information from these images and videos. And so if they can be of the best quality to reflect your work, that would be very important to consider.
Great, thank you. Linda has a great question. Since not many artists have completed projects at the $3 to $5 million range, what do you see as significant size projects in the artist experience? Let's take that one.
Well, that's a very good question. I think significant size would be something that perhaps is in the $500,000 range of production.
Right, and something else to keep in mind is that we'll be expecting artists to apply as teams, and so if one of you has more experience on a bigger project and can sort of address that interest, then not all of you would have to. So say you have someone on your team who has never worked on a project of this scale, but it would be important for that person to be teamed up with someone who has worked on something more significant. So please be very thoughtful as you're building your teams for applications.
Yeah, we don't want this requirement to intimidate people. So if you're passionate about this project, we want you to apply. Any additional questions?
I think we'd want to restate on the question of who's eligible to apply that individual artists or collaborations are eligible. And collaborations may include architects, landscape architects, or other kinds of teams. So I think for artists who may want to be part of a project of this scale and who haven't had that experience before, they might really look for who the collaborators might be to make an appropriate team that represents the capacity to deliver on this kind of project.
Thank you, Jesse. Passion over resilience. We have another question. Okay, Lisa has a great question here. What's the main distinction between the artistic statement or the artist statement and the vision statement?
So again, an artist statement would be more similar to something that you would typically use in an application, and it would help us understand you and who you are and your approach. With the project vision, we really are looking for something really about what this project how you're connecting to this specific project on MLK and Coretta Scott King and the city of Boston. So that's the basic distinction, is that one should be really talking about you and who you are as an applicant, and the other should be more about this project in particular and why you think it's appropriate now, why you think Boston is an appropriate place for this project, in terms of what your conception of the project would be. And again, you might want to go back and think about the things that we were asking for in terms of the project, really acting as a call to action, and really being an active project in that way.
If I can add to that, and Karen, correct me if I misstate this, but the way I think about it is the artist statement is about how you think about public art and how you represent your work. And then the vision statement is what excites you about this project? Why do you care about MLK Boston? And why are you excited about doing something for Dr. King and Coretta King?
Right.
Okay, there's another question here from Stephen. He asked, can you review the word length limits on the statement and the vision? Am I correct that these are separate documents?
Yes, they're separate documents and they're each 250 words. And again, we're really trying to make it a simple project for you, also simple for the jury to review and get to understand you. So, be thoughtful about what you submit.
Some things, such as the artist statement, you may already have, and you may choose to use from what you have. So some of this is material that when you put your response together, you might be able to fold in without new work.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, we have one more here. So this is from Vinny, and it says, I attended one of your community meetings last month, and favor was expressed for San Francisco's King Memorial, where the dominating focal point is a water feature. Oftentimes, limitations of funding for maintenance drives the focus for your creativity in public art design. Thus, I have questions which I hope raised during the discussion. What is the City of Boston's position on long-term maintenance, self-sustaining versus high maintenance? Number two, more specifically, is the city willing to maintain a water feature or any other high maintenance feature? Those are great questions. So we did reference in a couple of community meetings that the MLK Memorial in San Francisco was in no small part an inspiration for this project. I don't know if any of you have visited that memorial in San Francisco, but it's quite impressive and immersive and reflective. And we are trying to raise enough money that there'll be an endowment for maintaining the site in eternity. Based on where the site is located, which we will announce before the 5 finalists are selected, there might be different levels of infrastructure allowed. So some sites would lend themselves to a water feature more easily than other sites, but we will announce that and the endowment amount and what we expect for annual maintenance at the time we select the 5 finalists. Anything else you want to say on that, Karen?
Just that there will be some fundraising for an endowment for maintenance, and that is something we're thinking about. I think something else to consider is checking on the curatorial mission that the Art Commission has and the enduring materials that we ask that you consider. If you are not local to New England, keep in mind that we do have long winters. Not to rule anything out, whether it's a water feature or something digital that would require maintenance. But we will be looking for durability and something appropriate for the climate here.
Okay, Daniel asks a very related question. It's saying, is the memorial expected to be purely structurally based, or is there an openness for different digital media representations within a single structure? I think the answer is yes. We're open for all types of ideas. And again, this isn't really during the RFQ process, but when we select the 5 finalists during the RFP process, we definitely will accept admissions, which can include digital media. We need to be mindful about how best to do that, surviving the Boston winters, but that is possible and has been done successfully at other sites. Any additional questions? Okay, let me see. There's a couple more questions that show up here. So Karen asks, do you prefer individual or combined artist statements for teams? I think combined. And then how would young artists fare in submitting the RFQ? Yeah, so Maya Lynn is someone we talk about quite a bit. For those of you not familiar with her work, I believe she was a graduate student at Yale at the time she applied for the Vietnam Memorial. So she had not done any significant work, but if you are an art student and have not done any significant work, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars funding, we would encourage you to try to partner with someone who does have that experience. And together as a team, you hopefully will have the experience to deal with some of the issues we talk about in the application criteria. Stephen asks, based on the inspiration of the Boston Holocaust Memorial and the San Francisco King Memorial, is the committee open to figurative bronze in a more traditional style? And the answer is yes. And again, that will be during the RFP process, not right now during the RFQ process, but if you're one of the 5 finalists selected, we absolutely would be open to that.
And you wouldn't be ruled out from the consideration because you're a figurative artist.
Right.
It's perfectly open to figurative.
Any additional questions? We have a question here from Amy. It says, for the 3 files for the team description, how do you want them presented? 1 file for all appropriate CVs, 1 for prose descriptions of team qualifications, etc. Probably just 1 PDF.
Yeah, so we have it so that you can submit up to 3, but again, just keep in mind that what would be easiest for the jury, they're going to be reviewing them through submittables. So they're going to be looking at them online on a screen. So if you can just put everything into 1 PDF, that would be appreciated. If you don't have the ability to do that, then we made it so that 3 separate documents could be uploaded.
Any additional questions? All right, we're out. Is it a wrap?
So if you want more information for this project, you can visit mlkboston.org. If you're hearing this and you are seeing this right now, but if you want to revisit it later, we'll also be posting this on mlkboston.org. And that really should be the first place you start when you're looking for information on the project. And unless we get any questions right now, I think we'll probably close up this conversation. But again, please do keep in mind that we are here. We are excited for your interest. We really want to encourage you to engage. If you are thinking about applying, please, spend time building your team now. I think that's the most important at this stage. If you're an interested artist and you feel like you have, something to offer, but you don't necessarily meet all the criteria for selection, please, really start to put together a team so that we can consider you. We're very interested in working with a lot of different artists when we get to the next phase. But for now, we're really relying on you and you to put yourself out there for this important project.
All right, thank you, everyone. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to your submissions.